When I came at the property that Saturday morning and found Nicole sobbing in the kitchen, I knew I'd committed the biggest error of my life. She was standing in front of the sink, hands dipped in soapy water, her shoulders stooped like she was bearing the weight of the entire world. Her hair, usually so carefully tended for, was pulled back in a tousled ponytail. The heavy circles under her eyes were so deep it seemed like she hadn't slept in days, and she was crying quietly, the way women cry when they don't even have the energy left to make a sound. Behind her, in the open layout living room that linked to the kitchen, there were at least 8 people. There was Marcus's mother, Linda, that woman who had looked at me from day one as if I were a minor roadblock in her path. His 2 sisters, Paige and Brooke, with their piercing voices and laughter that sounded like mockery. The younger brother, Ethan, with his wife and their 2 children, tearing wild through the house, totally out of control. All of them were slouched on the furniture like they owned the place, demanding coffee, asking for more toast, yelling that the jam was gone. And my daughter, my Nicole, was serving. She was serving as if she were the hired help in her own home. "Nicole, where's the sugar?" one of the sisters yelled, not even looking at her. "Nicole, these eggs are cold." "Make me others," Marcus's mother, Linda, ordered, using a tone that brooked no argument. My daughter moved back and forth like a ghost, obeying every command, wiping every plate, enduring every disrespectful comment. And I, standing in the doorway, felt rage start to rise from the pit of my 70-year-old stomach. This was not what I had planned. This was not what I bought this home for. It had been exactly 1.5 years since Nicole left her first marriage. It was 18 years with a man who tormented her in every way possible without ever laying a hand on her. He ignored her for weeks. He told her she was worthless, that she was good for nothing, that she had wrecked his life. When she finally found the nerve to ask him for a divorce, he took everything. The house they had bought together, the savings, even the car I had given her when she turned 30. Nicole came at my house with 2 suitcases and a broken spirit. For months, I watched her move through my living room like a zombie, unsure what to do with her life, unsure how to start over at 43. She wept every night, thinking she had lost her chance to be happy, to have a family, to have a place of her own in this world. And I, as a mother, as a woman who had faced her own battles, decided to do something. I saved $5,000. Money I'd put away during 30 years of working as a bookkeeper. Money I'd stowed for my retirement, my final years, so I wouldn't be a burden to anyone. But when I saw my daughter like that, I knew that money had a more bigger purpose. I found this small acreage on the edge of the city. It wasn't huge, but it was beautiful. 5 acres with fruit trees, a 3-bedroom house, and a spacious kitchen with windows overlooking the garden. It cost $52,000, so I had to take out a loan for $7,000 from the bank. But I didn't care. When I handed Nicole's face the day I gave her the keys, I knew I had made the right call. "It's mine, Mom?" she asked, her eyes filling up with tears. "Is it really mine? Yours and no one else's?" I told her, hugging her tight. "A place where you can start fresh, where no one will ever make you feel less than you are." We cried together that day. We cried with joy, with hope, with that sense that things were finally going to get better. I pictured Nicole living there peacefully, tending her garden, maybe starting a small baking business like she'd always dreamed. I pictured her in peace. I never imagined this. I never imagined that 6 months later she would meet Marcus at a grocery store, that he would be so charming at first, so attentive, so different from her ex. I never imagined they would marry so quickly, barely 4 months after meeting. And I certainly never imagined he would bring this family with him. A family that had now turned my daughter's safe haven into their private vacation compound. "Dorothy, what a surprise," Linda said when she finally noticed me standing at the kitchen entrance. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were ice cold. "We didn't know you were coming today. It's my daughter's place," I said calmly, though I was boiling inside. "I can come whenever I like," she smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smirk of someone who believes they have already won, who has everything under control. Of course," she said, rising from the couch and striding toward me with the confidence of someone who feels they own the place. Although technically it now belongs to your daughter and my son. They are married after all. What belongs to one belongs to the other. I felt my skin prickle. This woman knew exactly what she was doing. She knew exactly which buttons to push. "Nicole!" I called, not keeping my eyes off Linda, the Viper, dressed as a respectable woman. "Come here, please." My daughter looked up from the sink, her puffy swollen. She looked at me with a mix of relief and fear, as if my presence might save her, but also make things worse. "I'm busy, Mom," she said, her voice cracking. "I need to finish cleaning up the breakfast mess." "Let someone else clean it," I said firmly. "Come here now." Linda laughed. She laughed in my face as if I had told the funniest joke in the world. "Oh, Dorothy, don't be dramatic. Nicole is just helping with the chores. We're family, right? Families help each other out." I looked around the room. Marcus's two lounging over the sofa, watching TV with their feet planted on my daughter's coffee table. The brother was outside in the yard smoking without a care. The kids had left a trail of toys and food all over the floor, and not one of them was lifting a finger to help. "How long have you all been here?" I asked. 2 weeks, Linda replied as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "And we'll be staying all summer. Marcus invited us. He said there's plenty of room, and why have a home if you're not going to share it with family?" 2 weeks. My daughter had been living this nightmare for 2 weeks and hadn't said a word to me. "And where is Marcus?" I asked, trying to keep my composure, although with every passing second, the pressure in my chest spiked. "He went out with his father to look at some land," Linda replied, sinking back onto the sofa as if it were her personal throne. "They'll be back for lunch. Speaking of which, Nicole, it's almost 11. You should start fixing something. You know my son doesn't like to eat late." Nicole nodded quietly and started pulling pots out of the cabinet with mechanical motions like a robot programmed to obey. Seeing my daughter like this broke my heart. This was not the woman I had raised. This was not the strong woman who had survived a toxic marriage and found the strength to start over. I walked over to her and softly touched her arm. She flinched as if my touch had scorched her. And then I saw something that chilled my blood. She had red marks on her wrists as if she'd been scrubbing dishes and floors for hours without a break. Her hands were cracked and swollen. Her nails, which she always kept perfect, were broken and dirty. "Nicole, I need to talk to you," I said in a low voice. "Alone." "Why don't you sit down with us for a while, Dorothy?" Paige interjected, the younger sister. "We're watching a really good soap opera, Nicole. Can you bring your mom a coffee?" "I didn't come to watch TV," I replied, not even glancing at her. "I came to talk to my daughter." "Oh, what an attitude," Brooke muttered loud enough to hear. Now we see where Nicole gets that from. I turned to face her. She was a woman in her mid-30s with bleached, dyed hair and nails so long, I wondered how she could do anything with them. She was eating grapes from a bowl, spitting the seeds directly onto my daughter's wooden coffee table. "What attitude?" I asked, my dangerously calm. She shrugged, still looking at the TV. "Nothing. Nothing. I'm just saying that sometimes Nicole gets a little sensitive, like doing a few chores is the end of the world." I took a deep breath 1, 2, 3 times. I had promised myself years ago that I would never lose control in front of people who weren't worth the energy, that I would give them the satisfaction of seeing me explode. But these people were testing every ounce of patience I had. "Nicole, let's go outside," I said, taking my daughter's arm firmly but gently. "But lunch?" she started to protest. "Lunch can wait." I led her out of the kitchen before anyone else could object. We walked toward the yard, far from the eyes and ears of that clan of leeches. Nicole walked with her head down, dragging her feet as if each one weighed 100 pounds. When we reached the old swing set I had installed the week after I bought the place, I made her sit down. I knelt in front of her, ignoring the ache in my 70-year-old knees, and took her ruined hands in mine. "Tell me," I said simply. "Tell me everything." And then, as if someone had opened a floodgate, Nicole began to sob. Not the silent crying I had seen in the kitchen, but a deep, soul-shaking sob. The crying of someone who had been holding everything in for far too long. "I don't know how it happened, Mom," she choked out. Everything was going well. Marcus was so good to me, so different. He made me feel special, important. He never mentioned his family was like this. He never told me his mother was so controlling, so demanding, so cruel. She nodded as tears continued to fall. When we got married, they only came to visit sometimes. A Sunday here, a Saturday there. Linda always made comments, but Marcus said that was just her way, that she didn't mean anything by it. I tried to get along with her, Mom. I really did. I know, honey, I know. But 3 weeks ago, Linda called Marcus, saying she needed a favor. That her landlord had raised the rent on her apartment, and she needed a place to stay while she found something cheaper. Marcus asked me if she could come for a few days. I didn't want to, but how could I say no? It's his mother. I felt the anger surge inside me, but I stayed silent, letting her talk. She arrived with 2 suitcases, Nicole continued. She claimed it would only be a week. But on the 3rd day, Paige showed up with her things, saying she'd fought with her boyfriend and needed a place to stay. Then Brooke arrived, saying her apartment was being remodeled. Then Ethan with his wife and kids, saying they wanted to spend a few days in the country. And Marcus didn't say anything. I asked to be sure. Nicole shook her head. He says yes to everything. If his mother asks for something, he can't refuse. He says we owe them hospitality because they're family, that this house is big enough for everyone, that I'm overreacting when I complain. Overreacting? I repeated, feeling the temperature of my blood spike. Overreacting when they're treating you like a maid in your own home. Linda says it's my obligation as the wife to take care of the family. Nicole said that this is how things are done in their family, that a good wife always puts others' needs first. Nicole wiped her tears with the back of her hand, and I thought maybe she was right. Maybe I'm the one being selfish. Maybe this is how normal families function, and I just don't know because I only grew up with you. Those words hit me like a slap across the face. My daughter was doubting herself, her worth, her right to be treated with basic respect in her own home. All because a controlling woman had found a way to get inside her head. Nicole, look at me, I said, cupping her face in my hands. Look me in the eyes. She slowly lifted her gaze. Her brown eyes, so much like mine, were filled with pain and confusion. None of this is normal, I said firmly. None of this is right. A family does not use you. A family does not exploit you. A family does not make you feel like a stranger in your own house. But Marcus says, I don't care what Marcus says, I interrupted her. This house is not Marcus's. This house is yours. I put it in your name, remember? Only your name is on the deed. I made sure of that specifically so no one could ever take it from you. When I bought the acreage, I was very clear with Attorney Miller. I told him I wanted everything only in Nicole's name. Not even I appeared as a co-owner. I had learned from my own marriage 40 years ago that a woman needs to have something that is completely hers, something no one can touch, something that gives her security and power. But we're married, Nicole said, her voice small. What's mine is his. No, I said firmly. This house is separate property that you acquired before the marriage. Legally, it is only yours, and that means you decide who stays and who leaves. I saw something change in my daughter's eyes. A small spark of hope, perhaps, or maybe backbone. I can't kick them out, Mom, she whispered. Marcus would never forgive me. And is he forgiving you for being miserable? Is he forgiving you for crying in your own kitchen? Is he defending you from his family? Silence. A silence that spoke volumes. Where are you sleeping, Nicole? I asked suddenly, a question that had just crossed my mind. She lowered her gaze. On the small sofa in the living room. And your room? Linda said she needed a comfortable bed for her back. And since the master bedroom has the newest mattress, I couldn't listen anymore. I stood up from the ground with a determination I hadn't felt in years. Get up, I told Nicole, extending my hand. She looked at me, confused, quickly wiping the last tears from her cheeks. What are you going to do, Mom? I'm going to remind those people whose house this is. I walked back toward the kitchen with Nicole following my steps. I could feel her trembling behind me, probably terrified of what might happen. But I had made my decision. I had seen enough, heard enough, and I was not going to allow anyone, absolutely anyone, to treat my daughter this way. When we entered, The scene was exactly as I had left it. Linda on the couch like a queen, the sisters lounging and watching TV, the kids running and shouting unsupervised. The mess was worse than before. Juice was spilled on the floor. Crumbs were everywhere. Dirty dishes were piled up on every available surface. "Nicole, you're back," Linda said, not even looking at her. "Perfect. I need you to make me a cup of chamomile tea and make sure it's piping hot this time. The one this morning was lukewarm." I planted myself in front of the television, completely blocking the screen. All eyes turned to me. "Excuse me," Paige said with that spoiled teenager tone. "We're watching that." "Not anymore," I replied, my voice calm but firm. I searched for the remote control, which was lying between the sofa cushions, and turned off the TV. "What do you think you're doing?" Linda rose, her face transforming into a mask of indignation. "You can't just come in here." "And I can, and I am," I interrupted her. "This is my daughter's house, and I think it's time we had a conversation about rules." Linda chuckled, but it was a humorless, scornful laugh. "Rules, Dorothy? I think you don't understand how things work. My son is married to your daughter. That makes us family, and family doesn't need rules to visit." "Visit?" I repeated the word, letting it hang in the air. "That's an interesting word. A visit lasts one day, maybe two, perhaps a weekend if you get along very well. But you've been here for 2 weeks. That's not a visit. That's an occupation." Paige got up from the sofa, crossing her arms. "Look, lady, I don't know what Nicole told you, but we are not an invasion. Marcus invited us. It's his house as much as hers." "No," I said, looking her directly in the eyes. "It's not. This house is solely in Nicole's name. Marcus has no legal right to this property, so technically he can't even invite anyone without her permission." I watched their expressions change. Confusion, surprise, and then something that looked like fear in Linda's eyes. "That can't be true," she said slowly. "Marcus told us the house belonged to both of them." "Marcus either lied to you or simply assumed something that isn't true." I turned to Nicole, who was standing at the kitchen entrance with wide eyes. "Nicole, tell your mother-in-law whose house this is." She swallowed, looking between her mother-in-law and me. I could see the internal battle on her face, the fear of confronting the woman who had dominated her for weeks. But then something shifted. I watched her shoulders straighten a little, her chin lift barely an inch. "It's mine," she said, her voice shaky but audible. "My mother bought it for me before I met Marcus. It's only in my name." The silence that followed was dense, heavy. Linda looked at both of us as if she were recalculating the entire situation. I could see the gears turning in her head, searching for a new strategy, a new way to manipulate things to her advantage. "Well," she finally said with a forced smile, "that doesn't change anything, does it? Nicole wants us here. She's so sweet, so generous, not like some other daughters-in-law I've known who are selfish and petty. She understands the value of family. She was using the oldest weapon in the book, guilt, making it seem like any objection from Nicole meant she was a bad person. A bad wife, a bad daughter-in-law. "Nicole," I said, keeping my eyes fixed on Linda. "Do you want these people here?" There was a long pause. All eyes were on my daughter. I could see her struggling with the answer, how years of conditioning from her first marriage told her she had to be nice, that she had to please everyone, that saying what she really thought would make her a horrible person. Nicole began, her voice weak. "The truth, baby," I said softly. "Only the truth." She took a deep breath, and when she spoke, her voice was stronger. "No, I do not want them here." Linda gasped as if she had been slapped. Paige and Brooke looked at each other with expressions of shock. Even the children stopped running for a moment. "You cannot be serious," Linda said. "After everything we've done for you, after accepting you into our family, after my son rescued you from being a divorced, lonely woman." And there was the true face of this woman, not the sweet, manipulative tone, but pure venom saved, I repeated, the anger finally finding its voice. "Your son didn't save anyone. Nicole didn't need saving. She had her own house, her own life. If anyone benefited from this marriage, it was him. How dare you?" Linda took a step toward me, her eyes burning. My son is a good man. He works hard. He pays the bills for this house. What bills? I asked. The electricity? The water? Because I imagine with 8 people living here, those bills must be pretty high lately. She opened her mouth to reply, but closed it quickly. I had hit a nerve. Nicole, I said, turning to my daughter. Who has been paying the utilities since they arrived? She looked down. I have. Marcus says his money is tight this month because he's saving for a project. And the food. This house was full of food when I left 3 weeks ago. Now I see the pantry is almost empty. I did the grocery shopping, Nicole admitted. 3 times this week. Nearly $800 in total. $800. My daughter had spent $800 feeding this family of freeloaders in 2 weeks. And have they contributed anything? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Nicole shook her head. I turned back to Linda with a cold smile. So, let me see if I understand correctly. You all came here, moved into my daughter's home, have been eating her food, using her utilities, sleeping in her bed, and on top of that, you've turned her into your personal servant. And all this without paying a single dime. We are family, Linda repeated, but her voice sounded less sure now. Family doesn't charge each other. You're right, I said, nodding slowly. Family doesn't charge, but family also doesn't exploit. Family doesn't humiliate. Family doesn't turn your home into your prison. This is ridiculous, Brooke intervened, standing up from the sofa. Mom, you don't have to listen to this. When Marcus gets here, he'll put these 2 in their place. Marcus won't do anything, I said with a certainty that surprised even Nicole, because by the time Marcus gets here, you won't be here anymore. The room went completely silent. Even the children had gone still, sensing the tension in the air. What did you say? Linda asked slowly, dangerously. What you heard, I replied. It is time for all of you to pack your bags and leave. Linda looked at me as if I had lost my mind. Then she let out a dry, humorless laugh full of contempt. You can't kick us out, she said, crossing her arms. This is not your house, Dorothy. It belongs to your daughter and my son. And as far as I know, my son has just as much right to be here as anyone. Your son can stay if Nicole decides he can, I answered. But you are not welcome. And who is going to kick us out? Paige asked with a smirk. You, a 70-year-old woman, please. I stepped up to her slowly, looking her straight in the eyes. She was taller than me, younger. She probably thought that gave her some kind of advantage. But I had lived 70 years in this world. I had raised a daughter alone after my husband died when Nicole was only 5. I had worked in offices full of men who thought they could intimidate me. I had survived loss, betrayal, and pain that this spoiled girl couldn't even imagine. Be careful about underestimating older women, I said in a low but firm voice. We've survived too much to be afraid of people like you. Paige took a step back, her smirk fading. Nicole, Linda said, ignoring me completely and turning to my daughter. You're not going to allow this, are you? You're not going to let your mother come in here and cause problems in your marriage. Think about Marcus. Think about how he'll feel when he finds out you kicked out his family. And there was the manipulation again, the emotional blackmail, the way to make Nicole doubt herself, to make her feel guilty for wanting peace in her own house. I watched Nicole open her mouth, probably to give in, to apologize, to say everything was fine. But before she could speak, I cut in. Marcus can feel however he wants, I said. But he will have to understand that his wife deserves respect in her own home. And if he can't understand that, then maybe he needs to ask himself what kind of man he is. You are trying to destroy their marriage, Linda accused, her voice rising in volume. That's what you're doing, isn't it? You never liked that your daughter found someone. You always wanted to keep her dependent on you. The accusation was so absurd it almost made me laugh. I who had spent my life savings to give my daughter independence. I who had worked double shifts for years to make sure she never went without anything. I who had prayed every night for her to find someone who would truly make her happy. I won't dignify that with a response, I said simply. You have 1 hour to pack your things and leave this property. 1 hour? Brooke yelled. Are you crazy? We have suitcases, boxes. The kids have toys all over the house. Then I suggest you start now instead of continuing to argue. Ethan, who had been quiet all this time smoking outside, finally walked in. He was a stocky man in his 40s with a beer gut and a perpetually bored expression. "What's going on here?" he asked, looking between his mother and me. "This woman is kicking us out," said his wife, a thin woman with a shrill voice who hadn't spoken until now. "Can you believe it? She's kicking us out." Ethan looked me up and down, evaluating me. I could see the contempt in his eyes, the way he assumed he could intimidate me just because he was a man, just because he was physically bigger. "Ma'am," he said, his voice trying to sound threatening. "I think you're a little confused. This is my brother's house, and we are my brother's guests, so you have no authority to tell us anything." I pulled my cell phone out of my pocket. A simple gesture, but one that made everyone tense up. "What are you going to do?" Linda asked suspiciously. "Call the police? Don't be ridiculous. They won't do anything. We haven't committed any crime." "I'm not going to call the police," I said, dialing a number I knew by heart. "I'm going to call my lawyer." I watched their expressions change. The lawyer? That word has power. It has weight. It means legal consequences, documents, official things that can't be ignored or manipulated with sweet words. The phone rang twice before he answered. "Dorothy, what a surprise. How are you?" "Hello, Attorney Miller," I said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "I need you to clarify something about the deed to the acreage we bought for Nicole last year. The house is solely in her name, correct? Her husband has no ownership rights, correct? It is private property acquired before the marriage. It is completely in her name. Why? Is there a problem? There are people on the property who refuse to leave when asked to do so. Can my daughter legally demand that they vacate? Absolutely. It is her private property. If she asks someone to leave and that person refuses, that constitutes trespassing. She can call the police and they will have to escort them off." I looked at Linda as she listened to every word coming from the phone. Her face had gone pale. "And if they are relatives of her husband?" I asked. "It doesn't matter. The law is clear. Private property means the owner decides who can be there and who can't. The fact that they are related to the husband gives them no legal rights whatsoever." "Perfect. Thank you very much, Attorney Miller. I'll call you if I need anything else." I hung up the phone and put it in my pocket. The silence in the room was absolute. "Did you hear that?" I asked, looking at each of them. "If you are not off this property in 1 hour, Nicole is going to call the police. And believe me, you do not want that to happen. Police officers are not kind when they have to remove people who are trespassing." "This is unbelievable," Linda muttered. "Absolutely unbelievable. Wait until Marcus hears about this. Wait until he knows his own wife kicked his family to the curb." "Marcus is free to have his opinion," I said. "But this is the reality. His family has abused Nicole's hospitality. They have turned her home into their personal hotel. They have spent her money, occupied her space, and treated her like a servant. And now that is over." "We didn't do any of that," Brooke yelled. "Nicole is overreacting as always. She's so dramatic." "Dramatic?" I repeated, feeling the temperature of my voice drop dangerously. "My daughter has raw, cracked hands from cleaning and cooking for you. She hasn't slept in her own bed in 2 weeks because your mother appropriated it. She spent $800 on food that you all devoured without contributing a cent. And you call her dramatic?" Brooke opened her mouth to reply, but nothing came out, because she knew it was true. They all knew it. "Mom," Nicole said, her voice shaky from her position at the kitchen entrance. "What's going to happen when Marcus gets here?" It was the question that had been floating in the air all this time. "Marcus, the husband, Linda's son, the man trapped in the middle of all this." "That depends on him," I replied honestly. "He can get angry. He can try to defend his family, or he can see this for what it really is, a necessary intervention to protect his marriage and his wife's mental health." "He will take our side," Linda said with certainty. "My son knows his place. He knows family comes first. His family is Nicole now," I said, looking at her directly. "When he married her, she became his priority, not you, Linda." "That's what you think," Linda spat. "But a son is always a son. Blood is thicker than any marriage certificate. And there was the real truth, this woman's deep belief that her son would always belong to her, that no wife could ever be more important than his mother. It was a battle Nicole could never win. Not as long as Marcus remained tied to Linda's manipulations. "You have 50 minutes, I said, looking at my watch. "I suggest you stop talking and start packing." For a moment, no one moved. They all stood there looking at me as if they expected me to back down, to say it was just a joke, that of course they could stay. But I didn't move. I stood there planted firmly with my arms crossed, and an expression that made it clear I would not change my mind. Finally, it was Ethan who spoke. "This is stupid. I'm going to call Marcus." He pulled out his phone and dialed. We all waited in silence as the phone rang. "Once, twice, 3 times, voicemail?" "He's not answering," he muttered, putting the phone away in frustration. "Then I suggest you start packing and explain the situation when he finally answers," I said without compassion. Linda glared at me. If looks could kill, I'd be dead on the floor. But I had faced worse looks. I had faced bosses who yelled at me, doctors who gave me bad news, bank officials who told me I didn't qualify for loans. An angry glare from a manipulative woman was not going to make me back down. "Fine," she finally said, her voice icy. "We're leaving, but this is not going to stand. Marcus will know exactly what happened here today." She turned to my daughter with an expression of deep disappointment. "I hope you're ready for the consequences of blaming your husband and defending your mother instead of your marriage." It was her last arrow, her final attempt to plant seeds of doubt and guilt in Nicole's heart. And for a second, I saw it work. I saw my daughter's eyes fill with fear, her shoulders hunch. "Nicole is not blaming anyone," I cut in before Linda could do more damage. "She is defending her right to live in peace in her own house. If Marcus has a problem with that, then the problem is his, not hers." Linda let out a scornful sound and headed toward the master bedroom, the one she had occupied as if it were her own. Paige and Brooke followed her, mumbling loud enough for us to hear words like ungrateful and terrible. Ethan stayed for a moment longer, looking at me with something that seemed between respect and resentment. "You know you're going to cause a family war, right?" "If defending my daughter causes a war," I replied calmly, "then so be it." He shook his head and went out to the yard to gather his children's things. His wife followed him, shooting me daggers as she picked up toys from the floor. When we were finally alone in the living room, Nicole collapsed onto the sofa, her body trembling. I sat down next to her and held her tight, just like when she was a little girl and had nightmares. "Did I do the right thing, Mom?" she asked, her voice broken. "Or did I just destroy my marriage?" "My love," I said, smoothing her hair, "a marriage that can only survive if you agree to be mistreated is not a marriage worth saving. But I love Marcus, I know, and maybe he loves you too. But love is not enough if it's not accompanied by respect. And his family doesn't respect you. And worse yet, he hasn't defended you from them." We stayed like that for several minutes, listening to the sound of suitcases being dragged, drawers opening and closing, voices arguing in distant rooms, the sound of an invasion finally being taken apart. "I'm scared," Nicole admitted. "I'm scared Marcus will leave me, that I'll be alone again, that I failed at another marriage." "Listen to me carefully," I said, taking her face in my hands so she would look me in the eyes. "If Marcus leaves you because you didn't allow his family to mistreat you, then he did you a favor, because it would mean he was never the man you thought he was, and you deserve better than that. But I'm 43, Mom. Who will want me at this age? I already failed once." "You didn't fail at anything," I interrupted her firmly. "Your first husband was an abuser. That wasn't your fault. And if this marriage doesn't work out, it won't be your fault either. The fault lies with the men who don't know how to value the extraordinary women they have by their side." She leaned into my shoulder and cried, not the silent crying from the kitchen, nor the hysterical crying in the garden. This was a cry of relief, of release, of years of holding it in silence because she had to be strong, because she had to keep the peace, because she had to be the good wife, the good daughter-in-law, the good woman. A half hour later, we heard the sound of vehicles arriving. My heart sped up a little. Marcus had arrived. Nicole immediately tensed up next to me, quickly wiping her tears. "It's okay," I said, squeezing her hand. "I'm here. You're not alone." The door opened and Marcus walked in, a man of medium height with hair starting to gray at the temples. Behind him came his father, an older, quiet man who rarely said anything at family gatherings. "What is going on here?" Marcus asked, looking at the suitcases piled up in the living room. "Why are they packing? Are they going on vacation or something?" Linda stormed out of the bedroom like a hurricane, her face red with fury. "Marcus, thank goodness you're here. Your mother-in-law has gone crazy. She's kicking us out of the house." Marcus looked at me, confused. Then he looked at Nicole. "What? What is she talking about?" "Marcus," Nicole began in a trembling voice. But I stood up and spoke for her. "I asked your family to leave this property because they have been abusing Nicole's hospitality for 2 weeks." "Abusing?" Marcus repeated as if the word made no sense. "They are my family. I told them they could stay as long as they needed." "This is not your house to make those invitations," I said evenly, but firm. "What do you mean it's not my house?" His voice rose in volume. "I'm Nicole's husband. I live here. Of course it's my house." "Living in a house doesn't legally make it yours," I explained. "This property is solely in Nicole's name. It's private property that she acquired before marrying you. You have no ownership rights over this acreage." I watched his face change as he processed this information, which he clearly didn't know or had chosen to ignore. That doesn't matter. We're married. What's hers is mine." "Not in this case," I said, shaking my head. "And even if it were legally shared, which it is not, you still wouldn't have the right to invite people who mistreat your wife in her own home." "Mistreat?" Marcus turned to his mother. "What is she saying? Did you mistreat them?" Linda put on her best innocent act. "Of course not, son. We have been nothing but kind to Nicole. She's overreacting as always. You know how she is, how I am?" Nicole asked, standing up from the sofa, her voice stronger now. "How am I, Marcus? Tell me." He remained silent, clearly uncomfortable being trapped between his mother and his wife. "Am I overreacting when I cry because your mother sleeps in our bed and I sleep on the sofa?" Nicole continued, her voice trembling but firm. "Am I overreacting when I spend all my money feeding your family while you save up for a project? Am I overreacting when I get up at 5 in the morning to prepare breakfast for 8 people and go to bed at 11 at night after cleaning up everyone's messes?" "Nicole, you're being dramatic," Marcus said. But his voice sounded less convinced. "No," Nicole said, taking a step toward him. "I'm not dramatic. I'm exhausted. I'm hurt, and I'm tired of you ignoring me when I tell you your family is hurting me." Marcus opened his mouth to reply, but found no words. I watched him look at his mother, then at Nicole, then at me. He was looking for a way out, a way to resolve this without having to take sides. But that option no longer existed. "Marcus," Linda said with a soft, manipulative voice, "your wife is letting her mother come here to destroy our family. Are you going to allow that? Are you going to let a stranger separate us?" "I am not a stranger," I said with an icy voice. "I am the woman who bought this house for her daughter, the woman who is protecting her daughter from abuse. And if you see that as a negative thing, then the problem is you." "No one is abusing anyone," Linda insisted. "We are family. Families live together, help each other, share space." "And what have you shared?" Nicole asked, her voice now louder, more confident. "What have you contributed to this house besides more work for me?" Silence. No one answered because there was no answer. "I'm asking you," Nicole continued, looking at each member of Marcus's family. "How much money have you put toward the food, the electricity, the water you waste in your 40-minute showers, the gas you use when you leave the stove on all morning?" "I didn't know you were keeping track," Brooke murmured with sarcasm. "I'm not keeping track," Nicole replied. "But when you spend $800 in 2 weeks on food for people who don't even say thank you, you start to notice." Marcus paled. "800? Yes, Marcus. $800 of my money because you said your money was tight this month. But it turns out you're not too tight to go out with your father to look at land. Which probably meant going out for breakfast and a beer while I cooked for your family. I saw something crack in Marcus's expression, a small fissure in his facade that everything was fine. Nicole, I didn't know you felt this way, he said, his voice softer. I told you, she replied, and now there were tears in her eyes, but there was also fire. I told you 3 times. The first time you told me not to overreact. The second time you told me your mother was just trying to help. The third time you got angry with me and told me I was the one with the problem, not your family. Son, Linda interrupted, don't let her manipulate you. She's using tears to make you feel guilty. Stop it, Marcus suddenly yelled, surprising everyone. Stop it, Mom! Linda recoiled as if she had been hit. She was clearly not used to her son talking to her like that. Did you know Nicole hasn't slept in our bed since you arrived? Marcus asked his mother, his voice trembling with contained emotion. Did you know she's been sleeping on the sofa? Did you even care to ask if she was comfortable? I have back problems, Linda stammered. I need a firm mattress. I thought Nicole would understand. And why didn't you sleep in one of the guest rooms? Marcus asked. Why did you have to take our bedroom? Linda had no answer for that. Because the truth was obvious. She had taken the master bedroom simply because she could. Because no one had stopped her. Because she wanted to assert dominance over the space. Marcus ran his hands over his face, breathing deeply. When he spoke again, his voice sounded worn, defeated. Mom, I think you should go. What? Linda looked at him as if he had just betrayed her in the worst way possible. Marcus, you can't be serious. I'm your mother. I know and I love you. But Nicole is right. You've taken advantage of her kindness, and I allowed it because I didn't want to see what was happening. Marcus, please. Linda's voice was now pure pleading. Don't do this. Don't make me feel like I'm a bad person. I just wanted to spend time with my family. You could spend time with us without moving in, Marcus said firmly. You could visit on weekends. We could go out to eat together. But this, he pointed to the suitcases, the mess, the tension in the air. This is not a visit. This is an invasion. The words I had said earlier were now coming out of her own son's mouth, and they cut deeper coming from him. Paige stepped forward, her face red with anger. I can't believe you're kicking us out for this woman. Your own family. Marcus, the people who were there when you were born, when you grew up, when you needed us. And I'm grateful for that, Marcus said, looking at her. But Nicole is my wife. She's my family now, too. And you've treated her like an employee in her own house. How did you expect me to react when I finally opened my eyes? You didn't open your eyes, Brooke spat. They brainwashed you. That old lady, she pointed at me with contempt, came here to cause problems because she can't stand her daughter having a life of her own. I took a step toward her. Watch what you say, girl. I came here because I found my daughter crying in her own kitchen, exhausted, humiliated, treated worse than a dog. And if that sounds like causing trouble to you, then you have no idea what family means. Dorothy is right, a voice we hadn't expected to hear said. Marcus's father, who had been quiet all this time, finally spoke. Linda, what we did is wrong. I knew it from the start, but I didn't say anything because I never say anything. But this time, I can't stay quiet. Linda turned to her husband with an expression of shock. You too. My own husband is going to side against me. I'm not against you, he said in a tired voice. I'm against what we did. We took advantage of Nicole's kindness. I watched her work like a slave these past few days and did nothing to stop it, and I'm ashamed of that. There was a moment of absolute silence. Linda looked at her husband as if she didn't recognize him. Her children looked at her, expecting her to say something, to defend them, to somehow shift the blame onto everyone else. But for the first time, Linda was speechless. Her arsenal of manipulation, her guilt tactics, her victim strategies, all had failed. She was being confronted not just by strangers, but by her own son and her own husband. Finish packing, Marcus finally said. His voice was firm despite the visible pain in his eyes. You can stay in my old apartment. I still have the keys. It's downtown. It has 2 bedrooms. It's not big, but it's enough until you find another place. I'm not going anywhere, Linda said, straightening her back, trying to regain some dignity. If we leave, you come with us, Marcus. That is the only option. I looked at Marcus, waiting. This was the moment of truth. The moment he would really have to choose between his mother's manipulation and respect for his wife. Marcus looked at his mother, then at Nicole, who was standing next to me with tears streaming down her cheeks but with her head held high. I could see the internal battle on his face. Years of conditioning versus what he knew was right. No, Mom, he finally said. I'm staying here with my wife, in her house, where I should have been all this time, defending her instead of allowing her to be treated like this. Linda gasped as if she had been slapped. Her eyes filled with tears, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of powerlessness, of knowing she had lost the control she'd had over her son for 45 years. You'll regret this, she said in a trembling voice. When she disappoints you, when this marriage fails like her first marriage, you are going to regret choosing a stranger over your own blood. Nicole is not a stranger, Marcus said with a firmness I hadn't heard from him before. She is my wife, and if this marriage fails, it will be because I didn't protect her when I should have, not because she wasn't worth it. Linda looked at all of us with a mixture of pain and fury that seemed to consume her from within. For a moment, I thought she was going to continue arguing, that she would launch more accusations, more manipulations. But something in Marcus's expression, in the firmness of his stance, made her realize that this battle was lost. Fine, she finally said, her voice icy. We're leaving, but don't expect me to ever speak to either of you again. Not to you, Marcus, and certainly not to you, Nicole. You have chosen your path. Now you'll have to live with the consequences. She turned and marched toward the master bedroom to finish packing. Paige and Brooke followed her, shooting us looks of pure hatred. Ethan and his wife hurriedly gathered their children's things, muttering among themselves about ingratitude and disrespect. Marcus's father stayed a moment longer. He walked over to Nicole and put a hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry, he said simply. I should have said something sooner. I should have defended you. Nicole nodded, unable to speak through the tears that were now falling freely. He nodded back and went out to help load the suitcases into the car. Marcus collapsed onto the sofa, his head in his hands. I could see him trembling, processing everything that had just happened. He had defied his mother for the first time in his life. And even though he had done the right thing, it was clearly costing him every fiber of his being. I went to Nicole and hugged her. She clung to me as if I were her lifeline, sobbing into my shoulder. They weren't tears of sadness. Not entirely. They were tears of relief, of liberation, of years of holding it in silence finally coming to an end. The next 30 minutes were organized chaos, suitcases being dragged, boxes being loaded, children crying because they didn't want to leave. Linda moved through the house with the wounded dignity of a dethroned queen, collecting every little thing that belonged to her, as if each object were proof of the injustice she had suffered. At one point, Paige tried to take a decorative lamp from the living room. That lamp stays here, I said firmly. I bought it, Paige lied boldly. No, I bought it, Nicole said, raising her voice for the first time. 8 months ago at that antique shop downtown. It cost $10 and I paid cash. I can show you the receipt if you want. Paige released the lamp in a fury and stormed out of the house without another word. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, all the suitcases were in the cars. There were 2 vehicles parked outside, Linda's sedan and Ethan's truck. The children were already buckled into their seats, still crying and asking why they had to leave. Linda came out of the house for the last time, carrying her handbag. She stopped at the threshold of the door, looking at all of us with an expression that tried to be contemptuous, but couldn't completely hide the pain. Marcus, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Last chance. Come with us. Don't let these women destroy our family. Marcus, who was standing next to Nicole with his arm around her, shook his head slowly. I've made my decision, Mom. My place is here. Linda pressed her lips into a thin line. Then so be it. But when you realize your mistake, when you see that you chose wrong, don't come looking for me. This door closes today and it won't open again. That is your choice, Marcus said, his voice calm but firm. I am only choosing my wife. You are the one turning that into a war. Linda didn't answer. She simply turned around and walked to her car with her back straight and her head held high. Paige and Brooke got into the car with her. Ethan, his wife, and their children got into the truck. Marcus's father was the last to get in, giving us one last apologetic look before closing the car door. The engine started. The cars began to move slowly down the gravel driveway toward the gate. Nicole, Marcus, and I stood on the porch, watching them drive away. No one spoke. We just listened to the crunch of the tires on the gravel, the sound of the engines, and then the silence when they finally disappeared from view. Nicole was the first to move. She turned to Marcus and hugged him tightly, sobbing against his chest. He hugged her back, his own tears finally falling. I'm sorry, Marcus whispered again and again. I'm so sorry, Nicole. I should have listened to you. I should have defended you from the beginning. I'm sorry. She couldn't reply. She just cried and clung to him as if she were afraid he would leave too. I let them have their moment. I stood on the porch, looking out at the empty driveway, feeling the weight of everything that had just happened. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel happy. I just felt tired, relieved, and hopeful that maybe, just maybe, this would mark a new beginning for my daughter. After several minutes, I walked over to them and placed my hand on Nicole's shoulder. Are you two okay? I asked softly. Nicole nodded, wiping her face. Yes, Mom, I think so. Marcus looked at me with red eyes. Dorothy, I don't know what to say. You were right about everything, and I was a coward. You weren't a coward, I said honestly. You were caught between two loyalties. That's not easy for anyone. The important thing is that you finally made the right decision. Do you think I did the right thing? He asked uncertainly. She's my mother. My family. Your family is Nicole now, I said firmly. And yes, you did the right thing. A mother who truly loves you would never put you in the position of having to choose between her and your happiness. She forced you to choose, not you. He nodded slowly, processing my words. It's going to take time, he said, to reconcile all this with what happened. I know, I said. And that's okay. Take all the time you need, but in the meantime, take care of your wife. She needs you now more than ever. I will, he promised, looking at Nicole with a tenderness that gave me hope. I promise you, Nicole, I will never let anyone treat you like that again. I will never ignore you when you tell me something is wrong. Nicole looked him in the eyes. Really? Really, he said, taking her face in his hands. You are the most important thing in my life, and I should have shown you that from the beginning. They kissed, a kiss full of apologies and promises, and I, feeling that my work here was done, began to walk toward my car. You're leaving already, Mom? Nicole asked, separating from Marcus. You two need time alone, I said. To talk, to heal, to start over. But will you come tomorrow? She asked in a small voice, still needing my presence, my support. I'll come when you need me, I said, smiling. But for now, this is your house, your space, your life, and you need to live it without your mom watching every step. She nodded, understanding, but I saw the shine of tears in her eyes. Thank you, Mom, for everything, for defending me, for not letting me get lost. I'm never going to let you get lost, I said, hugging her one last time. That's what mothers do. We're there in the darkest moments, reminding our daughters who they truly are. I got into my car and started the engine. Before driving off, I rolled down the window and looked at them one last time. Marcus, I said, catching his attention. Take good care of her, because if I ever find her crying in that kitchen again, next time I won't just kick out your family. I'll kick you out too. I wasn't joking, and he knew it. He nodded solemnly. It won't happen again. You have my word. Good. I started the car and began driving down the gravel path. In the rearview mirror, I could see them standing together on the porch, embracing, watching me drive away. They looked small in the distance, fragile, but also united in a way they hadn't been before. I drove back to the city with my mind full of everything that had happened. My hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel, not from fear, but from the adrenaline that was still rushing through my veins. I had faced Linda and her entire family. I had defended my daughter in a way I never thought I would have to do again. And though I felt exhausted, I also felt alive in a way I hadn't experienced in years. When I arrived at my apartment downtown, it was almost evening. The streetlights were beginning to turn on, and I could hear the familiar sound of traffic, the voices of neighbors, the urban life that had been my home for so long. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and sat down in my favorite armchair, the one I had bought 20 years ago, which knew every curve of my tired body. My phone rang. It was Nicole. "Mom!" Her voice sounded different, lighter, freer. "You made it home safely." "Yes, my love. I'm home having tea." "Marcus and I have been talking," she said, really talking for the first time in weeks. "He apologized for everything, for not listening to me, for not defending me, for letting his family treat me like that." "And what did you tell him?" "I told him I forgave him, but that things had to change. That if we were going to stay together, I needed to know he would be on my side when it mattered. That I couldn't feel alone in my own marriage again." "And what did he say?" "He cried, Mom. He really cried. He said he was ashamed of himself, of how he let things go so far, that he had been so programmed to obey his mother that he didn't realize he was betraying his wife in the process." I felt my chest loosen a little. Maybe Marcus really had learned something from all this. Maybe this marriage had a chance after all. "I'm glad, my love. Truly, we're going to clean the house together," Nicole continued. "The whole house. Change the sheets, wash everything they touched, reorganize the rooms. Marcus says he wants the house to feel like ours again, not a reminder of what happened." "That's a good idea," I said. "Sometimes we need to physically clean a space to be able to heal emotionally." "Mom." Her voice became softer, more vulnerable. "Do you think I'm a bad person for kicking out Marcus's family?" "No," I replied without hesitation. "You are a woman who finally defended her right to live with dignity in her own house. That doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you strong." His mom said horrible things before she left. She said I had destroyed their family, that I was manipulative, that Marcus was going to regret choosing me. "Those are the words of a woman who lost control," I said firmly. "They have nothing to do with you, and everything to do with her. Linda is used to controlling her son, to having power over him. When you and I confronted her, that power disappeared, and that terrifies her. Do you think Marcus can forgive me someday? I mean, if his relationship with his mother is ruined because of this." "Nicole," I interrupted her. "Listen to me carefully. You didn't ruin anything. Linda ruined her own relationship with her son by putting him in an impossible position. A good mother wants to see her son happy, even if that means taking a step back. She didn't do that. She chose control over love. Those are the consequences of her own actions, not yours." I heard her breathe on the other end of the line, processing my words. "Thank you, Mom, for coming today, for not leaving me alone." "I'll never leave you alone," I promised. "But now I need you to be strong, to stand firm on your boundaries, because Linda will try to come back. She will call Marcus. She will play the victim. She will try to manipulate him into feeling guilty. And when that happens, you two need to be united." "We will be," Nicole said with a determination that filled me with pride. "Marcus promised me he won't let his mother manipulate him again. He says he's going to set clear boundaries. They can see each other, but in neutral places and for short periods. Never living with us again. Never surprise invasions again." "That sounds fair," I said. "Marcus has the right to have a relationship with his mother if he wants, but that relationship cannot come at the expense of your peace of mind." We talked for almost another hour. She told me how they had found things hidden all over the house, belongings of Marcus's family they had intentionally left behind to have an excuse to return. A scarf of Linda's in the closet, the children's toys under the sofa, Paige's toothbrush still in the bathroom. I'm going to pack everything up and send it to them, Nicole said. I don't want anything of theirs here. When we finally hung up, I sat in my armchair for a long time, looking out at the city lights. I thought about my own mother who had died 30 years ago. I wondered if she would have been proud of what I did today, how I defended my daughter. I think she would. I think she would understand that sometimes love means being fierce. It means facing dragons. It means saying no when everyone expects you to say yes. The following days were quiet. Nicole called me every night to tell me how things were going. She and Marcus were working on their marriage, really talking for the first time about expectations, boundaries, family. They were going to couples therapy, something Nicole had suggested, and Marcus had accepted without resistance. The therapist says Marcus has what they call an enmeshment with his mother, Nicole explained to me in one of our calls, that he never developed healthy boundaries between her and him, which is why it's so hard for him to tell her no. And what does Marcus say about that? He says it makes sense, that he always felt he had to please his mother to be a good son, that the idea of disappointing her terrified him more than anything else. At least he's recognizing it, I said. That's the first step. 1 week after the incident, Linda started calling. First, she called Marcus directly, but he didn't answer. Then she started sending him text messages, each one more manipulative than the last. Nicole read some of them to me. Your father has heart problems because of you. I can't sleep thinking about how my own son betrayed me. I hope you're happy knowing you destroyed your mother. How is Marcus responding? I asked. He's not responding, Nicole said with satisfaction. The therapist told him not to respond to the manipulation, to only reply when she could talk without trying to make him feel guilty. So far, she hasn't been able to. Good, I said. Maintaining boundaries is the hardest part, especially at the beginning, but it gets easier with time. 2 weeks later, I received my own call from Linda. It was late at night, almost 10 near. Dorothy? Her voice sounded different, softer, more vulnerable. I need to talk to you. About what? I asked cautiously. About what happened. About my son. About everything. There was something in her tone that made me hesitate. She didn't sound like the furious, manipulative woman who had stormed out of that house 2 weeks ago. She sounded tired, maybe even remorseful. Fine, I finally said. Speak. I didn't realize, she began, her voice trembling slightly. I didn't realize what I was doing, how I was treating Nicole. In my mind, I was just being part of the family, helping, being present. But my husband made me see that it wasn't like that I was being abusive. I finished the word when she couldn't say it. Silence, then a sound that caught like a choked sob. Yes, she finally admitted. Abusive. That word has been haunting me. I never thought I would be the kind of person who would make someone feel that way. But you did, I said, not softening my words. You turned Nicole's home into her prison. You treated her like a servant. And when she tried to defend herself, you made her feel like she was the one who was wrong. I know, Linda said, her voice broken. I know now, and I don't know how to fix it. Marcus won't answer my calls. Nicole probably hates me, and I just want my son back. Then start by respecting his boundaries, I said firmly. Stop calling him 20 times a day. Stop sending him messages trying to make him feel guilty. Stop making this about you and your pain and start acknowledging the pain you caused. But I'm hurting, Linda said with a broken voice. It hurts not to be able to talk to my son. It hurts to know I lost him. You haven't lost him, I replied. But you will lose him if you keep doing the same thing. Marcus needs space. He needs time to heal and strengthen his marriage. And if you truly love him, you will give him that time without conditions. And if he never forgives me, then you will have to live with the consequences of your actions, I said without mercy. Just as Nicole had to live with the consequences of your abuse for 2 weeks, just as Marcus now has to live with the guilt of not defending her sooner. There was a long silence. I could hear her ragged breathing, her held-back sobs. What should I do? She finally asked. How do I fix it? Start by writing him a letter, I suggested. Not a text message, not a call. A real letter where you take responsibility for your actions, without excuses, without justifications, where you specifically acknowledge what you did wrong and how it affected Nicole. And then you give him space to decide whether he wants to respond or not. And if he doesn't respond, then you respect his silence and keep working on yourself, on understanding why you did what you did, so you never do the same thing again. Okay, Linda said in a small voice. I'll do it. I'll write the letter. Linda, I said before hanging up. One more thing. If this is another manipulation, if you're trying to find a way to regain control over Marcus, I'm warning you now. It won't work. Nicole and I are watching, and we won't let you hurt him again. It's not manipulation, she said quickly. I promise you. I just want my son back, and if that means changing, then I'll change. I hung up the phone, unsure whether to believe her or not. Time would tell. Manipulators can fake remorse, but they can't sustain it for long. Eventually, their true colors reappear. 1 month after the whole incident, Nicole invited me to the property for lunch. When I arrived, I almost didn't recognize the place. They had planted new flowers in the garden. The walls were freshly painted, a soft yellow. There were new curtains on the windows, a new table in the dining room, and the entire house smelled clean and like a new beginning. Do you like it? Nicole asked with a radiant smile I hadn't seen on her face in months. Marcus and I have been renovating every corner. We wanted it to feel like a new place, free of memories of what happened. It's beautiful, I said honestly. It feels like a real home. Marcus came out of the kitchen with a tray of lemonade. He looked different, too, more relaxed, more present. He greeted me with a sincere hug. Dorothy, thanks for coming. Nicole was excited to show you everything. We sat in the backyard under the shade of the guava tree. Nicole told me about her plans to start her home-based baking business, something she had always dreamed of but never had the courage to try. Marcus had built a small additional oven in the kitchen specifically for her. And your mother? I asked eventually, the question that had been floating in the air. Marcus sighed. She sent the letter you suggested. It was hard to read. She acknowledged everything without excuses. She specifically apologized to Nicole for every single thing she did and said she understood if we didn't want to have contact with her. And what did you decide? We replied, Nicole said. We told her we appreciated the apology, but that we needed time. That when we were ready, we could meet in a neutral place for short periods, but that she would never be welcome in our house again unless she showed, with actions, not just words, that she had changed. And she accepted. Yes, Marcus said. She said she would wait as long as necessary, that she would do whatever it took to rebuild trust. We'll see, I said with skepticism. Time will tell if she's sincere. I know, Marcus nodded. That's why we're in no hurry. Nicole is my priority now. And if my mother can't respect that, then she'll have to live with the consequences. We spent the afternoon eating, laughing, swapping stories. It was the first time in a long time that I had seen Nicole truly happy, truly at peace. And seeing Marcus look at her with that protective love, with that genuine attention, gave me hope that maybe this marriage could survive after all. When I was about to leave, Nicole stopped me on the porch. Mom, she said, taking my hands in hers, I've never properly thanked you for what you did, for coming that day, for defending me when I couldn't defend myself. You don't have to thank me, I said. That's what mothers do, right? She insisted. Not all mothers do that. Many women your age would stay quiet. They would say it's not their problem, that married daughters must solve their own conflicts. But you came. You faced an entire family for me. You risked Marcus leaving me. You risked making things worse. But you did it anyway because you knew it was the right thing. I felt tears sting my eyes. You are my daughter, I said simply. And no one, absolutely no one, has the right to treat you the way they treated you. If I hadn't intervened, if I had let you continue in that situation, I never would have forgiven myself. We hugged tightly, mother and daughter, survivors of different storms, but united by an unbreakable love. "I love you, Mom," Nicole whispered. "I love you too, my love. Always." I drove back to the city as the sun began to set, painting the sky in oranges and pinks. I thought about everything that had happened in the last month, how a situation that seemed hopeless had found its resolution, how my daughter had recovered her voice, her strength, her home. I didn't know what would happen with Linda, if she would truly change, or if she would eventually revert to her true nature. But that didn't matter so much anymore, because now Nicole knew how to defend herself. Marcus knew how to protect her, and I knew I had done the right thing. There are moments in life when love means being kind and patient, and there are moments when love means being unyielding and unbreakable. That day at the property, I had been both. I had been the mother my daughter needed in her darkest moment. And as I drove through the illuminated streets of the city, with the soft sound of the radio filling the silence, I allowed myself to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Pride in myself, in my daughter, in the strong woman I had raised. Because at the end of the day, that's what mothers do. We teach our daughters to be strong. We show them that they have worth, that they deserve respect, that no relationship is worth having if it comes at the expense of their dignity. And when they forget those lessons, when life hits them so hard that they lose sight of who they are, we are there to remind them. We are there to tell them, "Get up. You are stronger than you think, and I will be by your side while you fight." Because that is what it means to be a mother. It's not just giving life. It's teaching how to live with dignity. It's showing by example that there are battles worth fighting. It's being the shield when they don't have the strength to defend themselves and being the mirror that reminds them who they truly are when the world tries to make them forget. I arrived at my apartment that night, feeling the weight of my 70 years, but also feeling something younger, more vital. I had spent almost all my savings on that property. I had risked my relationship with my daughter's husband. I had faced an entire family without fear, and I would do it all again without a second thought. Because that house, that acreage I bought with the money from a lifetime of work, was not just a property. It was a symbol of independence, of security, of a woman's ability to have something no one can take from her. And when that security was threatened, when that refuge turned into a prison, I did what any mother would do for her daughter. I gave her back her home. I gave her back her voice. I gave her back her life. And in the process, I taught her the most important lesson of all, that no matter your age, no matter how many times you have fallen, you always have the right and the power to get up and say no more. That night, before going to sleep, I received one last message from Nicole. It was a photo of her and Marcus in the backyard, embracing, genuinely smiling. And below the photo, just 3 words: "Thank you for everything." I smiled, put away the phone, and closed my eyes, knowing that my daughter was finally okay, that her house was truly hers, that her life belonged to her, and that if she ever needed me again, I would be there in 5 minutes, ready to fight again. Because that's what mothers do. We don't give up. We don't back down. And we never, ever let anyone hurt our daughters without consequences. Never. Did you like my story? And where are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you enjoyed it, you can support me with a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thanks so much for your support.